Hi everyone and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where three Pro Tools experts discuss, demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in Avid's official Facebook support forum. Anders, Andy and myself, Dave, take you deep into the workings of Pro Tools technique and Pro Tools ethos to help the user community understand and get the best out of their investment. And we hope that our tutorials and discussions are helping you all do that. In this episode, we're talking about a very exciting subject, the release of Pro Tools 2022.4, released in April of 2022. And Andy, probably more than the two of us, well, actually, Anders and I don't have anything. We don't know it. We never know anything about this stuff. Andy keeps all of this stuff very close to his chest. He's been bursting to talk about this stuff. There's a lot of changes. It'll all completely settle down the very excitable Pro Tools community, right?
Completely, yes. There we go. Thank you for listening to Pro Tools Answers. We hope to catch you at the next show.
That was a quick one. See you next week.
So many to talk about. Did you miss it?
There's the hardest part of my gig is knowing what's coming down the road and not being able to talk about it. And this, you'll once we start talking about it, you'll know that this is a project that has taken a long time to do because it's a big set of changes. But yeah, I've been bursting at the seams to try to not talk about this, not to hit my hand. But what we've got here with Pro Tools 2022.4 are absolutely usable and important new features on their own. But that's beside the fact that the entire product structure of Pro Tools has changed. Mm-hmm. Technically speaking, Pro Tools doesn't exist any longer, right? So we used to have Pro Tools First, Pro Tools, and Pro Tools Ultimate, right? And so now Pro Tools, with no description, doesn't exist anymore. Now we have three different, and I think improved levels, which Avid calls tiers. So let's take them from the bottom up. So the first tier, let me get my notes here. There we go. So the first tier that we have for Pro Tools is called Pro Tools Artist. And this kind of, but not quite, replaces Pro Tools First. Pro Tools First was a free product, but it was also seriously limited. Very, very, very scaled back. In fact, the architecture was different enough to make it, very, very, very difficult and limited to use. This is not the case with Pro Tools Artist. Pro Tools Artist is a full-on version of Pro Tools that is not all that far from what Pro Tools Standard used to be. It is smaller. It's scaled down. It has a smaller, complement of inputs and outputs and so on and so forth.
But it is also you still get 16 I/O, which is more than enough for most small like music recording studios. And you the only limitation I can think of is 32 tracks of audio, right?
I wouldn't be I wouldn't be surprised, Andy, if this is aimed at the singer-songwriter guys, people who are using MIDI, people who are recording guitars in stereo, keyboards in stereo, and vocals in stereo. And I think that community doesn't need very much more than that, right? When you're starting to do things a bit more seriously and you're recording things like drums, then you're going to want to go higher.
It's what it is. It's a low entry for people who are starting, exactly as you say, are starting with usually music, but it doesn't have to be, right? And then giving them a comfortable and useful place to learn and to get experience and to actually do real work before they feel the need to have to go on to the next things. So yeah, it does have some limitations, but it's not hobbled in the same way that Pro Tools First was, which is, for me personally, just awesome. That's great. It is, however, not free. So Pro Tools First was free. Pro Tools Artist is not, and it's $99 a year, which is not bad. $99.99 per month, and it is a subscription-only product. So there's no perpetual license. It's brand new. There never will be a perpetual license unless somehow Avid changes their mind at a later date. There's a couple things if you're thinking about going to Pro Tools Artist, again, take a look at the amounts of tracks and the amounts of inputs and outputs that might factor in. To me, the biggest limitations that are fine for some people, but completely unacceptable for others, are the fact that it has no video support. So there's no video track at all, and it is stereo only, just like Pro Tools Standard used to be. So I would think of this conceptually as being a slightly scaled down version of what Pro Tools Standard used to be.
Yeah.
Okay. At a vastly reduced price.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there, but of course, one benefit over the older Pro Tools First here is like it uses the standard AX plugin format, and you get a lot of plugins. Basically, you get every plugin that was used to be included in standard Pro Tools, and you can install your own plugins as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is an interesting thing. This is an interesting thing, actually. If Perpetual's going away, is the complete plugin bundle included all the time now?
No, it isn't. With the Pro Tools Artist, you get the Artist plugin, which is about 100 plus plugins. So basically, all of the plugins that used to be in the Pro Tools. And some that used to be in the complete production bundle only, but there is a lot of them right there, and I think there are a couple of really surprising ones that I was surprised to see.
Okay,
but even more than that, you're 100% right, Anderson and Dave. But even more than that, I don't know if you ever had the experience of working in Pro Tools First. I wrote a book on it, and it was so shocking to jump into there because there's no playback engine. Yeah. There's no I/O. Well, the playback engine is vastly reduced. There's no I/O setup window. There's no clips list. There's no clips list in Pro Tools First, and it would just do me in. And though it was Pro Tools in many regards, it was completely not Pro Tools in a lot of other ways. This is not that. This is this is one version.
It's Pro Tools.
Of Pro Tools, and you move on, and it's not like you have to relearn anything. You're not going to be shocked. You're just going to get more, right? And that's what I think. For anybody who's serious about using Pro Tools or growing their careers or their hobbies or whatever you want to do with Pro Tools, $100, sign me up. That's hard to say no to.
And by the way, you get Ceremony Melodyne 5 Essential as well included in that price.
Yep. No, it's a very serviceable version of Pro Tools if your work can deal without working in surround or working without video. It's very serviceable.
Yep.
So that's the first tier, if you will, right? The middle tier, and this is kind of where the standard version of Pro Tools used to reside, is called Pro Tools Studio. And Pro Tools Studio, just like Pro Tools Standard used to be, is $299 a year or $99 a month. Now, here's the difference: is going forward, it's subscription only, right? So if you have a perpetual license for Pro Tools Standard before, that's great. But for Pro Tools Studio, that's subscription. And this is the middle version. It's roughly the same spaces as what standard Pro Tools was. It works with Carbon, just like standard Pro Tools did. Just like Pro Tools, it has a single video track, which is completely fine for a lot of workflows, right? But a lot of features that used to be only in Ultimate have found their place in Pro Tools Studio, and I'm using Pro Tools Studio right now because I'm writing a book about it for the Avid Learning series, and I'm not hitting walls like I thought I would. Certainly not like I used to when I was dealing with Pro Tools Standard. And another one, and this is maybe the biggest single shot in the arm for Pro Tools Studio versus the standard version of Pro Tools, is it includes all the surround formats. So 5.1, 7.1, ambisonics, Dolby, all of that surround is now in the central Pro Tools product at the same price as what Pro Tools Standard used to be.
This is a significant one because Logic have released it recently, Cubase have released it recently. That immersive music mixing inclusion has been a significant thing for those two formats.
Well, and Pro Tools for a long time was kind of the only major DAW that didn't support surround sound at their, at the basic level. And I would say that studio is the fundamental professional level. I don't see a whole lot of recording studios using Pro Tools Artist. I could be wrong, right? But I think that Pro Tools Studio is going to be your meat and potatoes version, yes. and now it supports the same surround formats that Pro Tools Ultimate does, which is awesome.
And I like finding these little weird angles here. One new thing is that you can use the internal sound card on a PC now, right?
Yes. So it's not that they weren't completely unsupported, but what the heck do they call that?
It's Wasabi.
I keep on wanting to say wasabi. Of course, I love everything's wasabi.
Well, this latched onto me because it used to be a Budweiser advert, wasn't it? That support has been improved. So now you don't have to, hopefully the idea is that you don't have to rely on ASIO for all on a Windows machine to the extent that you had to before. Now, it's still recommended that you don't, mix and match different interfaces because of clocking and all the things that were the case before, right? But yeah, there's a lot of small improvements that you could see in the whole line. Right, and that Wasabi is just one of them.
Another thing here, an advantage over the artist is that you here get the complete production bundle.
That's right.
Which is fantastic value.
Yeah, we love
get all the and this goes for all the levels. But if you're an annual subscriber, you also are added to the Avid Inner Circle program, as opposed to the Pro Tools Answers Inner Circle program, and that gives you all the stuff that the Inner Circle program gives, sound libraries and the whole 9 yards, and that's something that we're expecting to grow over time. It has grown since Inner Circle started, and it's all those extra value adds for your annual subscribers, like month to month. I don't think get that, but your annual subscribers are going to at all the different levels. Okay.
So one more thing that I discovered while reading through this list is that it has Venue S6L system support, which means it can integrate with the Venue console. And I mean, Andy, when we spoke about this earlier, you said our clients, there are probably not that many people that are interested in such things. But I'm speaking to you, the guy over there that actually needs this. This is huge. I mean, to integrate with the Venue system and not having a hardware system, meaning like with some kind of HDX card and stuff, you can just do that natively in this configuration, which is fantastic.
Now, the only other thing that bears mentioning here, because now that in many senses the Pro Tools Studio feels a lot like Pro Tools Ultimate used to, right?
Yep.
And still does. But one of the things that is different is how DSP factors in. You can use Carbon with this, and you can use the hybrid mix engine, the DSP engine, with Pro Tools Studio. I'm getting all my names mixed up here. Pro Tools Studio. But if you want to use HDX or HD Native, you're going to have to go with the third tier. And that's where things get just a tad confusing. So the top tier, if you purchase it, is called Pro Tools Flex, Flex. And that goes for $9.99 a year, again, subscription only. And that Flex bundle includes Pro Tools Ultimate software. So as far as Pro Tools versions go, you've got Pro Tools Artist, Pro Tools Studio, and Pro Tools Ultimate. But Pro Tools Ultimate is purchased as part of a Flex package, right? And so you get Pro Tools Ultimate, which of all the versions of Pro Tools has changed the least, right? Because it had all the features. Of course, there's a lot of new features in Pro Tools 2022.4 for everybody. But of all the different versions, obviously, it's the one that remains standing in this reorganization. But for example, the SoundFlow Cloud is I know one of the things that you get as part of that Flex bundle. And I'm told that there's, again, just like Inner Circle, there's more stuff to come, and it's just another value add for the people at that level, right? And there's a lot of different licensing options and stuff like that for complex installations and things like that. If you need it, right? If you don't need it, then obviously you just go with normal licensing. But there's a lot of flexibility with how you purchase it, which is, of course, why we're calling it Pro Tools Flex. And so I think the one place where you can possibly get confused is that Pro Tools Ultimate isn't directly purchased. Pro Tools Flex includes Pro Tools Ultimate.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic. And a couple of other news here, of course, you can now record 256 I/O. You got 256 I/O over Core Audio and Audio drivers, which is fantastic. And there's still only 192 over HDX or hybrid engine, but still that's fantastic, I think.
It's a it's big boy toys, right? So obviously it needs to be expandable to the biggest installations on the planet, right? But it's still got all that power. And again, if you want to use an HDX or an HD native system, or all that level of product, then you're going to need Pro Tools Ultimate. Pro Tools Studio won't cut the mustard for that part, that level. So guys, you're just seeing this for the first time. What do you think?
I'm incredibly enthusiastic about the lower tier specifically. I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for people wanting to get into just the basic version of, let's say the basic version. It's still a very good version of the software.
Completely fine.
It's broken down a little bit of a barrier to entry, I think, for some of the people that don't need the full features. They just want to record basically. They're not interested in video, not interested in any of the surround stuff. They just want to make good stereo music and be able to collaborate with people who are working on the studio versions and ultimate versions. So it's going to open up the user base a bit more, I feel.
The other thing, and it's interesting you mentioned this, that it opens up the door for people to easily start. There's a couple other little things that have changed. So the Avid Link application now takes a bigger role in the installation process. And it's a lot less painful than installation and licensing and all that stuff used to be. It's far more guided, far more guided for the initial purchaser. And I don't know if you've noticed it yet, but if you take a look at the dashboard, there's a tab where you can see tutorial videos and getting started help, and there's a support tab right there in the dashboard where you can get help on doing the things that you need to do. And there's a lot of great tutorials, some of them made by the training team that I'm a part of, and some of them made by other people in Avid and other professionals, and just the whole panoply of the Pro Tools community.
Can I just point out, when you said support here, I think you are touching on a very, very huge subject here for professionals. I mean, when you buy Studio and Artist, you get standard support, meaning you get the standard support that we're all used to. But if you go for the $9.99 Flex version, which gives you more flexibility, you get Expert Plus coverage on the support side. How important is that, Andy?
Well, if you're a bedroom studio guy who's messing around, you probably don't care. But if you're a broadcaster and something is crashing and you need to get it back up right now, people will pay big bucks to get the kind of support that level provides. So we have a lot of different support offerings for different kinds of customers. Everybody from Skywalker Sound to Fox Television, right? They have different needs, different timetables, different issues that they want to take care of, and that's where that level of support comes. So high level support is absolutely non-negotiable. Gotta have for big installations.
Yeah, so people might forget that when they're comparing prices here, because there is a price difference, and that's one of the factors that you have to count in, that you will get the Expert Plus support here.
I'd probably argue that a majority of people aren't going to be looking at Flex because we're not huge facilities. It's obviously aimed at facilities. If you got a $1,000 a year subscription.
Well, I mean, I think you're going to get Flex if you need to use HDX and HD native, because that's the requirement. That's what you have to buy to get.
That's a fair comment.
And you get a lot of other stuff as part of that Flex bundle, in addition to the flexibility with different kinds of licensing schemes and support and all that. So if you've got a professional recording studio and you're running HDX systems, you'll run Flex, and you're not losing any money. It's the same price as Ultimate has always been. But the real difference is that for the big facilities, the multi-user facilities, the broadcasters, the production houses that have very complex setups. Now there's flexibility, and there are options for them as well within that product, and they don't have to kind of go as far as they used to get the help that they need.
So now basically we've got like the three levels here are for three different categories of production, right? So and I think that's a very, very good like ladder approach to how to make everyone happy, and also thinking about the pricing there, of course.
So and before we end up, we'll talk about a couple of the new features, and we'll go into more depth later. But I want to basically, specifically and deliberately, step on the third rail.
Yep.
Subscription only. Go.
I'm very curious to see how this is received. But I think if you look at the way that the world has been going for a long time now, everyone is trying to do subscription models. And I think that as more time goes on, I think more people are starting to understand that when you buy a piece of software, it only has a short shelf life anyway, because of the constant turnaround of operating systems, and needing to maintain compatibility and things like that. And I'm not entirely convinced it's sustainable for companies to continuously turn out free updates to their apps to keep everything up to date. We pay for Camtasia. That's what we produce our show on. That gets used every year as well. That gets updated every year as well. And we don't get free updates to that. I subscribe to Photoshop, because there isn't any other way to do it. I need Photoshop for my work. There are plugins that we have to pay for upgrades for when they suddenly don't become compatible with previous operating systems. I think it's a natural thing, and if you own a piece of software for 2 years, I think the likelihood is that you're going to need 2-3 years. The likelihood is that you're going to need to pay for an upgrade. So the ownership of software, maybe it's a bit unfair to say it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but maybe not, because I think there's an expectation that we're going to need to continuously pump money into the assets that we own, and our tools that we own, to keep them current and to keep them working. But on the other side of that, life is expensive these days, and companies are huge and need that continuous recurring revenue to be able to keep going, and support the stuff that we're using.
There's no one forcing you to update your system, right? You could remain on Pro Tools 7.1 forever if you want to.
No, you're not wrong.
Of course, not updating your OS and stuff like that. If it works for you, just stay on that level, right?
Yep, you're not wrong. And we've been doing that for a while. But the world is forcing us. It's not just Avid. It's the world is forcing us to continuously upgrade. I think I had to upgrade an operating system once purely because I got a Magic Mouse for Christmas, and I couldn't use it without a new operating system. And then that forced me to upgrade the SSL Nucleus I was using, because that suddenly didn't come compatible. And I know I can make these decisions, but I think at some point you're going to have to move forward, whether you want to or not. Something is going to force you onto the next operating system or the next version of something. Again, whether you like it or not, it's inevitable.
I'm a big dumb old North American ape, and I am used to viscerally gravitating towards ownership. Right? I own this coffee mug. It's mine. Right. And even though it's always been when you buy software. You don't own it. You're buying a license. You've always bought licenses, right? Every piece of software you ever bought, you've bought a license to use it, right? It's just that license was perpetual and had the illusion of permanence. But as you say, Dave, that it's only as permanent as the system you're running it on and the operating system that you're running it on and all these other complex bits and bobs that comprise your system. And I have to say that over time, very gradually and very grudgingly, I've done the numbers, I've looked at it, and I'm like, unless I'm going to baby this computer that's sitting right here and squeeze 15 years out of it, and never let it upgrade, never do anything to it, and it's just going to do this one thing, I'm probably going to spend more money upgrading my Pro Tools system than I would if I had subscribed to it, right? And it's just you work out the numbers, and the numbers work. Now, the other thing, because I'm also on the other side of the glass inside the company, is that a very interesting thing happened when we started selling subscriptions, right? We've sold subscriptions forever, and we've sold them along with perpetual licenses, but subscriptions have been very, very popular, and the more popular they got, the more impetus and the more power and the more security we had in doing more upgrades more frequently. Because remember, back in the day when you bought a box license, you bought Pro Tools 11, and that's all you had for like the next year and a half until Pro Tools 12 came out. That's not the case. I mean, we have we'll release significant features 2-3 times a year, right? And we don't have to wait to deliver them because of subscriptions, and that's fantastic, right? It's great for us as a company. It's great for us as the production community as well. So I think I'm getting more comfortable with the idea of subscription. That said, now that you have subscription, we have to stare straight into the abyss of there may come a time when we don't run Pro Tools anymore and the subscription lapses or whatever. And so I think now, taking a second look at how you archive your systems, how you future-proof them, exporting your MIDI as a MIDI file, committing your tracks, doing all that stuff, all your due diligence now becomes, I don't think it's any important than it used to be. I think it's just something that's more obvious than it used to be, if that makes any sense.
Well spoken, Andy. Yep. That's it. That's right. Everything you said is true.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on to just talking about some of the new fun stuff that we get to play with now. So we'll just bullet point a few things, and then we'll talk in more depth in the next shows. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay.
So, yep, go ahead.
Where would you like to start? I know where I want to start. Where would you like to start?
Do it. Tell me where you want to start.
Okay, I'm really enthusiastic to talk about keyboard shortcuts. Customizable keyboard shortcuts.
So let me paint a picture, because like I said, I've known about this feature and lived with it for a long time. And in fact, just before the feature came out on a Pro Tools Answers show, I said, Avid will never do customizable shortcuts because the professional community doesn't.
And we believed you, Anders. We believed him.
Yeah. That's what I've been saying my clients ever since. And Andy, you said that, and you probably
I did say it.
You probably knew about this feature already when you said it.
But when I said it, and then literally like a week later, I saw the documentation for the new bit. I'm like, so I was. Pro Tools as an industry standard, and I'm not saying that in marketing speak, the industry has made Pro Tools the standard because of a lot of things. But when you're a standard, you're dealing with facilities that have people coming and going. And if you're a freelance Pro Tools guy, you're coming and going into different rooms, right? And when you sit down, you have to be aware of what your system can do, what will happen when you do certain things, and a big part of that is shortcuts. And if I hit the N key, I want it to do what the N key has done on all my other systems, and
whether you want it to or not,
whether you want it to or not, right? And so in that context, I have been initially dead set against customizable shortcuts because of the potential chaos that could ensue. I have to say, and one of the colleagues that we had here in the Japan office, and he's moved to the States since, is a guy named Daisuke Naito, who is one of the coolest, nicest, and smartest people all at the same time. Which I hate being a mean, dumb, uncool guy. But he kind of took on this particular feature most directly, and his implementation has been absolutely superb. Because it gives you the flexibility that you want, but you can always get back to two things. You can always carry your own shortcuts wherever you want to go without disrupting other systems. And when you need to, you can get back to the defaults quickly and easily. I think that, with great power comes great responsibility. And now the fact that we do have these keyboard shortcuts and they are customizable, I think that our due diligence in terms of, how to make the system our own and also how to prepare the system for the next person, I think we now have a new best practices, right? And do you remember back in the old days of analog studios, you would do what's called zeroing out the board, right? Unplug all the things that you plugged in. You would, set all the failures, and so that the next person that sits down can start from the same scratch that you did, right? And I think, because we've got a system that can be customized now with the shortcuts, there are going to be a lot of places that are going to say, before you leave, click the default button. Great. Easiest thing in the world. You just have to know how to do it. But it's a great implementation of that feature, which we'll get into deep in another show, because it really does demand some time to dig into.
And Flex also comes with SoundFlow, where you can do your own macros from within. That's fantastic also. I can't wait to look into that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Two new synthesizers.
So we're using this the proper noun cell at the end of the names of our new synthesizers, and there's a reason for that that will become obvious in the fullness of time. But the first ones to come out are one called Synth Cell and one called Groove Cell. Synth Cell is a 2 oscillator, 2 filter synth. It's pretty raw sounding. It's great for tweakers. You can kind of get that Eurorack kind of sound to it. It's not for wavetable stuff. It really is a 2 oscillator, 2 filter synth. Effects are in there. There's a couple other things that you can deal with in there. It's got a arpeggiator, which is cool, and it sounds fine. I will say this: I don't see myself using a lot of the sounds without kind of sculpting them, right? But as far as a really good start, I think it's going to be useful. Even more useful, though, I think, for me, this is me personally, it's completely subjective. The second one that we have is a plugin called Groove Cell, and it looks kind of like the an MPC, MPC with 16 pads. Those pads can take samples from your hard drive, and you can either layer them, you can round robin them, or you can turn them into velocity zones, which is great. It has multi-output, just like a lot of other instruments, so you can output them to your Aux Tracks and mix them like a drum machine or a drum kit. And it has, obviously the pads and the sound shaping and the envelopes and the whole nine thing. But if you click the grid editor, the grid editor is really well designed. And it's this, it's the matrix editor that looks very, very similar to the Roland series. You can export what you've done in that grid editor as MIDI, so you're not limited to using the grid editor and being stuck with that particular virtual instrument. You can randomize. You can. There's a lot of algorithms that you can apply to it. So it is, I think, simultaneously a great basic drum tool that's easy to just use on a basic level, but it's also got a hidden depth. Not hidden, but it's got a depth that if you're an experimenter and you want to, have a play with it, you can get some surprising results just by knowing, kind of where those tools are. And we'll talk more about that as well on a future show.
Yeah, these are the two big ones, aren't they? I was quite enthused by the new search function. You can bank directly to tracks with a
Yeah,
with
so
search.
search, and again, this is another thing that we can talk about in another show. But search is the default shortcut, which you can change with customizable shortcut, is Control Shift S on a Mac or Start Shift S on a Windows machine, and basically what that does is opens in the middle of the Pro Tools window a normal search window, just a regular search window. And this is, I think it's kind of related to custom shortcuts, but to me, to my way of workflow thinking, you remember when you could start typing and in an insert and it will come up with
search.
that?
Yeah, I love that.
That's, it took me a little time to get used to it and start doing it. But you can, with sends and with inputs and outputs and plugins on a track, just click there and then start typing and it will autocomplete. Fantastic. Great. This takes care of the rest of Pro Tools. So you hit the shortcut and a search window comes up in the middle and you type whatever word that you want and it will show you a list of the tracks, clips, keyboard shortcuts or commands, your groups that follow that name, or even Audio Suite plugins. So you can open up Audio Suite plugins from that window as well. It doesn't access AAX plugins. That's what the inserts are for, right? But you can open up Audio Suite plugins. Just type in bass or whatever, and you'll find all the presets for in Audio Suite. You'll find all the clips that are called bass, all the tracks that are called bass, all the groups that are called bass. And Bob's your uncle. It's very, very useful. And again, it's kind of stands on the shoulders of both customizable shortcuts and the searching that we've done in the past.
There's just one other thing I wanted to mention about GrooveCell and SynthCell. They are iLok licensable, right?
Yes.
But I don't think everyone has had their licenses delivered yet. I think Avid's doing them over a period of time. Mine haven't arrived yet. So if you install it and find that they're not there, they'll arrive eventually. So I think they're just giving it free to everyone, right? It takes some time.
The problem with being a publicly traded company and not being able to release things until they're released is once they're released, the entire planet wants theirs.
Yeah,
and so
now,
right now. And so it's going to take a little bit of time to get it all there, but this is something we've planned for.
Yeah, I don't think we'll end up dedicating an entire show to this, but Aux Tracks now load up in solo safe mode.
So every once in a while, Pro Tools does something that's small, but just
smart.
Makes me smile. And so now when you create an aux track, it will be instantiated as solo safe. And it was funny because while we were beta testing, they sent a message out to all of us. Is there any reason why you would not want to have your aux tracks be solo saved on launch? And I was scratching my head. I really couldn't think of a reason. And it apparently not many people could. So can you still unsolo save your auxes? Completely. It's the command click, same thing. But I think it's just one less click. Now, this is where I smile. Is if you in the past, if you had an aux track, first of all, you'd have to manually solo safe it, right? That's step one. That you don't have to do it anymore. But if you converted that aux track to a routing folder, that routing folder would be solo saved, just like the aux track before, right? And you would have, and at that point you would unsolo save it because the way that soloing works with routing folder tracks is different. Now, aux tracks are born solo saved. And when you convert them to a routing folder, that routing folder is not solo saved.
Great.
Nice.
That's clever. That's clever.
It's the small things, man. That's like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, nice.
Somebody's thing.
And then there's a host of new automation features, which will let you convert automation between, let's say, the Dolby Atmos panel automation into Pro Tools fader automation, panel automation and stuff like that. It's fantastic. Lots of things to look into there, right?
Yep, absolutely. So and this is specifically relating to the music panner, which has some great automation features, and you can basically convert that automation from the plugin to traditional Pro Tools automation, which is awesome. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of as if the new tiers of Pro Tools wasn't seismic enough. There's a lot of really good features. There's new virtual instruments. There's plenty for us to talk about over the next few weeks to dig deep into how to make the most of these features. It's a very, very busy and exciting time over here, and a lot for us to talk about over the next little while.
Yeah, indeed. Obviously, Dolby, the immersive stuff, will surround stuff, will dig deep into as well. The last one, color spaces, Andy.
So color spaces is one of those kind of it matters a lot to some people and doesn't matter at all to most people, right? So when you're dealing with a video file and you're looking at video in either the video window or an external monitor, sometimes the colors can be off, right? Or it can look washed out, or it can look oversaturated. Now in Pro Tools, and we'll show how to do this in a future show, but now in Pro Tools you can take a video track and you can change the color space, which changes the look of it. Actually, you know what? If you don't mind, I can show that really quickly right now if you want to see it. And I've imported some video here that you'll see. There we go. There's me. Okay,
that's you.
It is me.
Look, you're on video.
I'm on video in my video. There's something meta about this. And you'll see down here at the very bottom that the 709 full color, full spectrum, or full whatever, is the default. And it always is the default, right? But if I wanted to change the color spaces, what I would see is a list here based upon any other color spaces that are indicated by the file's metadata. Right now, there is no metadata in this file that is anything other than the 709 default color space. But if I hold down the command key, you'll see a list of all the available color spaces, and I'll show you what kind of color spaces do. So let's go over to something that I think is gonna. Let's go to this. So you just saw now. Maybe it's subtle, but you can see now the video looks a little bit washed out. Right, and this is really what we're talking about. We're talking about the blend, okay, and that now it's starting to look like real garbage, right? Because we're getting further away from what we want. And if I go now back to this color space, and this is as indicated by the metadata, boom, and now it turns back into what we have here. And really, like I said, if you want your video to look good for your customer, that's what you needed, right? And we didn't have that before, and now we do. So that's a pretty simple one to just knock out.
Hopefully I can edit this with live. Okay, so I think that's gone through all of the major changes. I think there's a couple of other little ones, but not really anything worth going into a lot of detail about. Anyone that wants to read the release notes, they're on avid.com. You can have a look through those yourself and see what some of the other things are that have been kind of updated and things like that. But I think for us, the next big thing is going to be talking about the keyboard shortcuts. And how that works. We're going to delve into that next week. So hopefully you'll stick around with us for that. If you're liking what you're doing, please hit like on our video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so that you get notified of all of the new videos that we release every week. This one is a little bit of a different one. We just wanted to get some information out there immediately for 2022.4. Typically we release on a Sunday afternoon. And head over to protoolsanswers.com. You can subscribe to us over there. Andy will write to you every week and just remind you what we're up to. And while you're over there, you might want to check out our own Inner Circle program that we may change the name of. We're not sure yet. I don't think Avid's going to get upset, are they?
Oh, hell no.
I don't think so. It quite nicely describes what we're trying to do in building our own little kind of Pro Tools community, supportive Pro Tools community that kind of meets up and shares stuff and discusses projects and things like that in a little bit of a closed safe space.
But that has really very quickly become a very nice place to hang out. I love hanging out on that Discord, our closed chat for the members. I think it's great.
I enjoy it. I'm looking forward to being able to discuss my projects and other people's projects in an area where there's no other noise. And just kind of discuss what we're doing and with a bunch of trusted friends. Really, that's what I'm looking for. So, you can check out our Inner Circle program, and if you wanted to join that, you can do that over at protoolsanswers.com as well. So all it leaves me to say is thank you very much to Anders.
Thank you.
And thank you to Andy.
You bet.
You guys are awesome. My name's Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers. We'll see you next week, and we're out.
Recording stopped.